All right, to start your weaving, you want to make sure that you give yourself some space as a reminder later for tying off when you're done at the very end, and also to create some tension to help you get started when you're weaving. And there's a few ways you can do this. Some weavers and artists like to tie a string all the way across, and that works. You can also use one of the shed sticks, which is a tool that helps you create a pattern so that you can lift your warp up a lot more quickly later on in your weave. You can also use this to set up your tension. So I'm just gonna slide it down in here like this. So then later on, this space is saved, so you can use that to tie off. It gives you larger space than just making tiny knots later on. Trust me, you will thank yourself later. And it's also very important to set up tension. So you could do this not even with a shed stick. It could be a popsicle stick. It could be a rod of some sort. Or again, it could be string that you tie off, but this is quick and easy and right here in our classroom. So I recommend using a shed stick. Then you can grab another shed stick later on, which I'll just use one of mine here as we are weaving. So again, to get started, you're gonna create some tension. You're gonna make sure you're going through all of the warp string that you wanna use. So I have an even amount. I'm gonna go under, over, basic basket weave pattern, and then slide that down all the way to the bottom of the loom.
For this tutorial, I'm going to be teaching you how to do a plain weave. It is a basic crisscross pattern with the weft thread passing over and under the warp. I'm going to use some scrap yarn I have available. You can use whatever you like.
So I recommend when you're getting started, you just cut off a section of the yarn that you like, and it's not super long, so you don't have to pull and yank it all the way through. You're going to tie a knot to secure your first string, or any string. One knot should be good. If you want to be extra safe, you can do another knot. I recommend you leave a little tail because you're gonna weave that in later so it looks clean. If you cut it really short and it's stubby, it's really hard to tuck that in, and it just kind of looks not the best later on. So I recommend you leave a little bit, not a ton, but just a little bit. That is enough that you can hook through and work with. So again, I'll show you that later on, but recommend that for now. And then you can either use your fingers, or you can grab a tapestry needle from the weaving station. There's different sizes available.
We're going to start our plain weave by taking our weft through the warp, going through a sequence of over and under, and then reversing the pattern.
So since I have the shed stick going over, under, I'm going to reverse and go the opposite. I'm going to go, we'll pretend I went, so I go under and then over, under, over, all the way across, and pull your string through. The first part, it is kind of frustrating. It'll get caught on that quite often. Once you get away from it, it doesn't happen as much. And then before you pull it all the way through super tight like this, you don't want to pull too tight. I'm going to make sure that you've got, oops, I missed one. There you go. You want to make sure that you're not too loose, but you're not too tight. And then you can use your needle and comb your yarn down, or you can also use a fancy comb to also knock your yarn into place. Super satisfying, designed to fit exactly for this loom that we have. So I'm gonna go back through and use the comb this time. So I'm gonna go opposite of the pattern. I went over, so now I'm gonna go, or I ended with over, so now I'm gonna go under, then over, under, then over, under, then over, and you're repeating this all the way across. A good way to check is if you look down, it should be the opposite of the last thing you just wove. I'm gonna pull it through. I like to have my opposite hand. If you'll notice, I've got one hand with the tapestry needle, the other hand is holding, kind of keeping track of that yarn. So that way when I yank it through, I don't pull it super tight. So I can keep control and track of it. And then knock it into place. And then you can repeat this
Plain weave pattern
as much as you'd like, the whole way up, or you could do it some way up and then change your techniques, whatever you find pleasant and satisfying, and you are weaving. A few final tips. You do want to make sure that your yarn is right up against each other. When tapestry weaving, it is normal to kind of see a checkerboard pattern unless you want it to be really tightly woven, and then you can push the yarn up or knock the yarn up against each other even tighter. Again, that becomes artist preference. However, there should not be super huge gaps in between your weaves unless you are designing that in a super experimental way. It's not very secure, and there's techniques in order to secure that. So for right now, the goal is to make sure that you are repeating your pattern effectively and you are creating this interlocking pattern in order to keep your weaving secure.